And between the pandemic and racial tensions in this country, we are living through some very challenging times. Here to help us guide us through all of it is David Muir from ABC World News Tonight. David, nice to see you, pal. How are you holding up?
I'm holding up just fine, Ryan. I appreciate what you all are doing every single morning, and I think it's true. I think what you and Kelly said earlier, which is, we all have a role to play too, and I think that is really to never underestimate our audience. They want the facts. They want to know what's happening in our country, no matter how painful or how difficult it is, and it is difficult right now. Um, but I think in some small way, by just talking about it, by addressing it, by listening to others, we can try to decrease some of the anxiety levels in this country. And I think that that's the role that you all play in the morning by trying to focus on the good in this country. It's the role I play at night by trying to just give people, the facts. I don't try to hide them from how difficult things are. And just like the two of you, I do try, at the end of the newscast every night to find some small, jewel of hope in the country to show that, we are better than this. There are things happening right now, every single day, where people are coming together and saying, you know what, maybe this is the first step, and I do love seeing that.
I think at the end of the newscast, it is like a nice hug to send us off after you deliver the news. But David, I always wonder, is it difficult to not get emotional? Is it difficult to not want to give your opinion because you are delivering the facts and the news every night?
I think that's a really good question, Brain. I think, listen, certainly when it comes to the politics of it all, and it has been politicized, and we are in a polarized time, I think you've got to stay away from, showing any kind of opinion there. That's just our role, and the facts speak for themselves. But there are, I often say that there's so much dividing in the country with opinion, and you'll hear voices on one end or on the other, that if I can be some sort of a voice that delivers the facts, but also signals to folks that we have a lot more in common than a lot of people would like us to think, and that there might be an extreme here and an extreme there, but most of us are that big gray area in the middle that just want to help each other and look out for our neighbors, and most of us are concerned about what we're seeing in our country right now. And I just think it's really, really important that we focus on that too, and let people know that 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 most Americans understand that there's just a lot of work to be done. And I think now is the time to listen to one another, take a breath. And I also think, Ryan, on this idea of emotion, and there are moments, where I'll write the piece, I know it's coming, and it still gets me. I'll have that lump in the back of my throat. But just think about what America's been through in just the last couple of months. I mean, we are still living through this pandemic. We've lost more than 100,000 American lives in this country. We have 40 million Americans out of work. That's 1 in 4 Americans. And we have a test of leadership. And I'm not talking about, necessarily the president here. It's the president, it's governors, it's local officials. They've all been tested in this, and rightly so. This is when we turn to our leaders, and people should come up with their own thoughts on what they have witnessed so far. And I think that if you don't feel it, in some of those moments, then you have to ask yourself, why are you in this? I do feel it along the way during the broadcast at night. I felt it, the other night when we had Chris Swanson. He was the sheriff in Flint County, Michigan, who was face to face with the protesters, and he said, I'm here for you. We're here to protect everyone. And then the protesters immediately react to the demonstrators. And I can't emphasize enough that most of the demonstrations in this country are peaceful. They just want to be heard, and we can't lose sight of that. And the sheriff said, I'm here for you. What would you like me to do? And they started chanting, walk with us, walk with us. And he said, my helmet's off, my baton is down, and he started walking. And I mean, I get sort of goosebumps even relaying the story again. And I've seen the story on our news and elsewhere, and it still gets me. But I also think that we have to remember that in addition to what we're going through right now, that we have a pandemic, we've lost American lives, we have an economy where 40 million Americans are out of work. And then we have this piece of video where, George Floyd, he should be alive today. And it's a really painful time, and we can't hide from the pain. We have to let people know, signal to them that we're going to get through this with all of you at home. And there was one other thing, you asked about. Kelly's, I know, back with us, and Ryan was asking me, Kelly, are there moments when it just creeps up on me too as I'm doing the news where you're overcome? And there was this moment early on in our coverage of the pandemic and the economy, and it was in Florida, and these food lines that were growing, by the day. And there was a veteran in line. His name was Don Hayden. He's a disabled Army vet. He waited for hours in line for food. He got to the front of the line and was told they'd run out of food. And he had his children, and he got into another line, and he waited for hours in a second line, for hours again. And he got to the front of the line, and they said, we've run out of food. And I remember that night on the news, I just kept coming back to this veteran and mentioning it in different moments along the way in the newscast. And, I wasn't trying to make a statement, but in mentioning him, I just thought I know people at home. I as I said before, I never underestimate their empathy, their generosity, and their hope for a better day tomorrow. And it was not surprising that the next morning there was such a reaction, on social media. People, and you guys know this, they write to me on my Instagram or on Twitter, or they guess my email, and they all wanted to help that veteran. And so I just asked one of the producers, can you just reach out to some of these families who say they want to help, and just put them quietly. This wasn't we didn't have cameras rolling. I just put them in touch with the veteran, and let's see what happens. And by the end of the day, we talked with the veteran, and he was overwhelmed. And he said, I didn't know that people cared that much. And, Americans from all over the country, from New Jersey to Missouri, put food on his table, gave his family, the support, not only financial, but the emotional support they needed in that moment. And the veteran Don came on our air with a message that night, and he just said, with his children sitting there, and it, overwhelms me even just telling you now, with his children sitting there saying, I'm grateful to America. I thank you for caring. And when I'm back on my feet, I will pay it forward. And I think that, in that moment for Don, and in this moment when you showed people joining on the sidewalk with their neighbors and showing that they're walking with them in solidarity, and the officers who, are kneeling face to face with the protesters and reaching out with their hand and saying, we hear you. These are the moments that we all have to not only share with one another, but to promise ourselves that we'll continue to show them every night. We can't let the fear and some of the ugliness that has been just a byproduct of this overwhelm the goodness in the.
It's, David, I remember that story so well. I was one of the people, I think, that commented on your Instagram because I was so moved by that veteran, and what America did, which is the best of America rallied around and found a way to provide his family. I find it so interesting that you said that he was going to pay it forward in some way, because here he is, a veteran who has already paid everything forward. And I think that's America's way of paying him back for all of his sacrifices and his family sacrifices. So it's so interesting, the way people sometimes, when they need help, are so uncomfortable asking for it, and I'm so grateful to you for illuminating those stories and giving all of us hope and faith in humanity. And it can't be said enough that these stories are so important, and the way people are reaching out and helping one another. But oftentimes those stories don't get highlighted, and I'm so grateful to you that you highlight those stories.
Thank you, Kelly. And just like that veteran in Florida, let's think about what Terrence Floyd said yesterday when he went back to Minneapolis. This is George Floyd's brother. You all mentioned it earlier. He said, what are you all doing? We're a peaceful family. We're not doing what you're seeing around the country. So if you are bothered by what you saw, and hopefully you are, you'll think about Terrence Floyd and what he's asked you to do, which is to listen, to play a role, to vote, to be part of your community, And that's what you can do to help this country begin to heal.
David Muir with us this morning. We're going to get a quick break, and we'll be right